That's why I often say to people, you gotta listen for opportunities, because you don't know what's next. When things come up, it's like, pay attention. There's a reason they're there.
You're listening to Inside Acting, a podcast dedicated to demystifying the inner and outer game of success in the entertainment industry. I'm your co-host, AJ Meyer.
And I am your other co-host, Trevor Algott. And coming up in episode 262, the first episode of 2017 and what we are calling season 14 of Inside Acting, AJ sits down with prolific LA casting director Michael Donovan. Now, Michael is someone we've wanted to get on this show for a very long time now. I know you've been working on this for a while, AJ, so I'm stoked. If you guys listening are at all interested in getting involved in the LA theater scene, Michael Donovan is most assuredly a name to know. In part one, AJ and Michael discuss Michael's journey to a career in casting, his instinct and belief that this was a job he could do and do really, really well, and the variety of things that happen both in front of and behind the table and the camera in the audition room. This is stuff that's going to support every actor listening in getting their head right for their next audition. Meeting.
Support for this episode of Inside Acting comes from Rehearsal Pro, the next version of Rehearsal, the essential app for actors. And it's now available in the iTunes App Store. So if you want to learn your lines, be off book for your auditions, explore your character, and make stronger choices, make specific choices. We talk about that in the interview later on in this episode, and do a whole lot more. Go to rehearsal.pro/IAP right now to learn all about the great new features in the new version of Rehearsal, the groundbreaking app designed by actors for actors. That's rehearsal.pro/IAP.
Happy New Year, Aj Mijer. 2017, man. This is craziness.
You're like, I don't believe it. Nope,
I kind of don't. I mean, time...
Give me a time machine.
Time speeds up the older you get because you have a larger sort of context with which to sort of slot time into your experience of life, and it's just a little obscene sometimes how quickly it moves. How are you?
I like the choice of the word obscene.
It's
a good one.
Not a word I chose lightly.
I'm doing well. I am using... I don't really believe in New Year's resolutions. I never really have. I may have said that on an older podcast, but I am instead using the transition from one year to the next as a sort of portal through which, as I walk through it, I'm re-upping on, commitments that I made in 2016, like with my meditation practice and, using Plant Nanny again and, getting back to some of these kinds of things. And also, what an amazing time to start. And I know we're going to talk about this, but what an amazing time to start the Artist's Way.
Yeah.
Which we just did in the membership. I'm being gentle with myself. I've made some pretty challenging but epic decisions regarding my personal life that are going to hopefully support me in moving forward. I'm very excited about myself as an artist this year. Yeah.
Awesome. Julia Cameron says something to the effect of treating yourself like a precious something or other in the Artist's Way. I can't remember the exact sentence, but it's we make ourselves strong by being gentle or something like that with ourselves. And I love that sentiment. So this is a great time to plug what's going on in the membership. I am so stoked about this because Grace Gordon, a longtime listener, member, supporter, she's got a podcast called the Book John Podcast. She's from Philly, so she's representing my hometown. And she basically is leading us as a community through the artist's way by encouraging us to post at least twice weekly and just creating a space for us to commune and share our experience going through this together, which is great because the artist's way is inherently a very personal, specifically personal process and journey. And yet having a support system or some sort of community in which to, Julia Cameron calls them creative clusters. I love that. But having a creative cluster in which to experience this as well, when you're ready to sort of reach out and be social about it, and I think that's absolutely an essential part of it. It's so huge. So if you are a member, hop into the membership, check out the Inside Acting Creative Cluster Artist's Way. It's okay if you don't have the book yet or if you haven't started yet. This is more. It's not about, as we talked about, doing it perfectly. It's just about doing it. It's just about leaning into awareness, leaning into intention and mindfulness, and starting to notice and really experience the texture of life. And I can say, having just recently completed it, and I'm going to go through it again, because one of the things that Julia Cameron recommends at the end of the book is turning right around and doing the course again. I'm going to do it again, and I'm excited because my experience has been that it definitely just tunes you into all the small little moments that you might otherwise miss living your life. And it's been absolutely magical for me. And so I'm really excited to go through it again with our community of members and listeners. And I'm really excited to do it with you, AJ, and to have lots of people join us and just creating deep, meaningful experiential work of substance, no matter how simple or trivial it seems. It's real because it's our experience, and sharing that is what makes this world a wonderful place to live. So tell me a little bit about this thing that you've put on the outline here. Just catching up, making the choice you're scared of.
Yeah, it's it's what I was just referring to when I talked about, making choices in my personal life that are opening up spaces for, my creativity, so to speak. I'm going to refrain from specificities to protect people's privacy. But, we've talked about on the podcast before, and I think you've been really great about this, Trevor. If you know that you're afraid of something, maybe maybe moving in that direction is exactly what you need. There was this moment in the last couple of days where I suddenly realized what I was really afraid of was to make this particular choice. And as soon as I thought to myself, you know what, I think that's the choice that I have to make, everything made sense. It all fell into place. It all made sense. And it was all like, wow, okay, I get it. Like, this is where, I should have gotten to maybe a few weeks ago or whatever, but everything happens in perfect time. And I just want to encourage people, especially with the turning of the year, and I don't know, whatever it is that you're up to right now in your life, if there's something that you're afraid of, explore what it might be like to actually take that on and make that choice and really do it. It might be really, really challenging to make that choice, but there might be some amazing stuff on the other side of it.
Yeah. What's coming up for me listening to you say that is the idea that how you do one thing is how you do everything. Something we've talked about on the show quite a bit. And for those of you listening who are maybe be like, what? The idea is that, like, you can't show up and be in excellence in one area of your life without it affecting the other areas of your life. Like, for instance, that's why I think some of us really admire people who are in great shape, because it's not like the aesthetic results of having a consistent workout and diet program that benefits your health. It's more about what it takes from a character point of view to achieve that. Yeah. At least that's the way I see it. And so hearing you talk about, facing your fears, like the things that scare you, and saying, you know what, maybe that's something I need to lean into and make happen in my life. Just need to, in order to grow. I'm wondering how this will influence how you show up in your meetings and auditions, and how you show up in your rehearsals and on stage and in front of the camera. I mean, it's hard to fake something in your life or be avoiding something in your life and then show up authentically in your creative work.
Yeah, well, there's a, I mean, this is your word, right? For 2017 is a vulnerability to it.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of vulnerability to make those kinds of choices, and then to just live in the being of like, okay, here's what life is like after I've made that choice. I'll talk about, I'm going to give away my pick of the week here, but I was watching Ryan Gosling on screen. I was like, what makes him so damn successful is his vulnerability. I just took that beingness out of the movie theater with me and throughout my life, just for those, day or two afterwards, and was just feeling like a different person. And, hey, that's what great art does.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I imagine that this is in some, I'm not trying to force a segue here, but I'm looking at what you wrote in the outline. I'm imagining there's some kind of connection with what you wrote here about dealing with endings with, I'm guessing you're referring to possibly the end of the year, but also if there's something else,
Yeah. 2016 was a doozy, man. A lot of people were I was catching people on social media and on blogs and things saying like, God damn, like fucking 2016, man. Are you kidding me? Like the hits just kept on coming. And I was, I'm a pretty, or at least I like to practice optimism. I don't see myself as somebody who's constantly looking for the bad stuff. So I was kind of like, okay, people, like settle down. A lot of good things happened in 2016. But as the weeks went on and like we ticked down to the clock, ticking over to midnight to bring us into 2017, I almost like experienced like an acceleration of like shitty things happening.
Yeah.
And it was kind of compounded. I went back to Philly. I had such a great time with my family. I just completely unplugged and was just present with them and just experienced a gratitude and a love for my family that I've never experienced before. And coming back to LA was kind of difficult this year. Like it was a tough transition. And then I came back and I got the news that my other grandmother had suffered a stroke and there was no chance for recovery. And she had a very short time left to live. And it was just sort of back and forth on the phone with family. And she passed away on New Year's Eve. And
oh my gosh.
And it was like just squeezing one more in there, man. Like just in case this year wasn't bad enough, just squeezing one more in there right before the deadline. So that was tough, and I was, in this newfound awareness, I'm finding myself really feeling and exploring what endings mean and how I cope with endings and transitions in my life. This was the year that I consciously made a choice to sort of really pull back on pressing forward with my acting career, my on-stage and on-camera acting career. As I've said, it's not something I'm leaving completely. I don't know what next week or next month or next year is going to hold. I'm definitely keeping the door open, but I'm not pressing forward with it. But owning that transition has been huge for me. And now with this sort of new awareness that the morning pages and the headspace meditations have engendered, I'm moving forward into the sadness of transition and dealing with endings, and also the excitement and the possibilities and all that entails. And it boils down to really one sort of key lesson, which now that I'm speaking this out loud, it sounds disjointed, but somehow it's connected in my brain. And that's that mood always follows action. It's easy to sort of get swept up in the emotion of a moment and say, wow, that's really affecting me. And I want to do what I feel like doing right now. And of course, there's a lot of value in doing what you feel like doing and honoring, your emotional desires and urges. But at the same time, if you've got to do something, and this plays into what you were talking about, AJ, and you don't want to do it, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Resistance can be feedback, but it can also be a cunning motherfucker. And you just need to sometimes set a timer for 10 minutes, start doing that thing, whether it's a phone call or whether it's just sitting down and laying down, staring at the ceiling and dealing with the emotions you've been avoiding, whatever it is, doing that. And so often the mood that you were seeking, the freedom that you were seeking on the other side of this thing, is what follows making yourself do it. And I think that is a key tenet of successful people, is that they understand that you have to do the thing to have the power. As Jeff, as what's his face who wrote The Slight Edge would say, you got to do the thing to have the power. It's not the other way around. You don't have the power and then you can do anything. You have to sort of man up first and do it first, and then the freedom is on the other side. And that's been a sort of key lesson that I sort of gleaned in those final hours of 2016, dealing with yet another sort of tragedy, and this one, hitting very close to home. I lost both my grandmothers in 2016. It was just one of those things where I was like, wow, where's the lesson in this? Like, I know it's the cycle of life. You can't avoid people dying, but what can I glean from this? Because this sucks, So that's kind of what I came out of it with, and just putting it into the context of all the things that I faced this year that I was avoiding, the unpleasantness. I realized that mood follows action.
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm sorry. My condolences for your grandma. I mean, I hate that our listeners are probably like, are these guys actually friends? Because I'm finding out, as we record.
Well, it just happened 48 hours ago. So
right. So my condolences.
Thank you.
Much love to you and your family. And of course, leave it to you. Leave it to Trevor Algatt to immediately take the grief and the impact and be like, okay, what am I supposed to be learning right now? Like, of course you would do that, and thank God for that too. Like, thank God we have somebody on that you're here on this podcast, and that we have these types of conversations, and we have a couple of listeners, one or two out there in the world, and we have somebody like with your sensibilities that can synthesize things in that way. I don't know. I think that there have been plenty of life lessons to be had from things that we have gone through. Either I've gone through it, or you've gone through it, or a listener's gone through it, or a guest has gone through it. And we have somebody with that ability. That's a unique skill set, my friend, and one that I know that you take sort of full advantage of in your life. And I don't know. I'm really grateful for it, and I hope you are too.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much. That means a lot. I do want to just clarify one point, and that's that I don't think it's necessarily bad to experience shitty emotions and feelings and difficulties in life.
No,
I think sometimes
not at all.
That's where the most beautiful art comes from. It's just saying, I give up. And you let the depression and the misery wash over you and just engulf you. Sometimes, like, that's just part of life. You can't avoid that. The funk will get you no matter what. Like, you can't, nobody's invincible to that. And sometimes you just need to feel it. But I think that just as much as you can, having that perspective that within, Napoleon Hill says it. I'm quoting everybody today. Napoleon Hill says, within every adversity is the seed of an equal or greater opportunity. And I try to see it that way. I mean, I have two people inside of me that I'm very aware of, and one of them loves misery, and he loves to be the victim, and he loves to mope and garner attention from people by being a pitiful person. And the other part of me, and this is like an even 50-50, they are perfectly matched. The other part of me is like the very resilient, like bouncy entrepreneur, like idea-filled opportunity, like every day, like the sun is always shining above the clouds kind of guy. And most of the time that guy wins, but a lot of the times the other dude just like comes in and bitch slaps that guy, and it's like, it's my turn. And he just lays all his stinky shit around, and then that's just the way I am for a couple days. And it's just a practice and an awareness, and not making any of it wrong or right or weak or strong. But thank you for saying that, because that's something that I do kind of look at and say, man, I'm so glad that I have that sort of in me to look at a situation like this and not get swept away, at least for too long.
The other thing I was going to say is you got to read Dark Nights of the Soul, man. Like, you've got to put that like at the top of your, list, because that's what it's all about. It's like the whole point of that book is to like understand that, these types of things are not obstacles to happiness. They just are. And we get to experience them, and we get to dive deeply into them, and we get to, you even said it, even art gets generated from that. So anyway, go read that book. Every time, it's one of those books where like you read through it and like every sentence hits you in the gut. You're just like, I can't. You're like sweating after a couple of chapters. You're like, I gotta put it down and come back to it. But the other thing too is it's a practice too. I'll read a chapter or two, and then I'll experience myself practicing it in my life for a day, 2 days, a week, whatever it is, and I'll come back and read the next chapter or two or whatever, and then continue to practice. So I'm actually really, and I'm reading other stuff at the same time. So I'm actually really enjoying the pace with which I'm going through the book and then creating stuff from it.
Awesome. That's cool, man. All right, well, that's on the top of my list then. Done. All right, well, do we have time for this question from Colin? What do you think?
I mean, I think we can. It's been so long. I feel like we should just, answer it as quickly as possible, and
all right.
Maybe point him in the direction of some resources. I mean, you and I Googled it.
Yeah. So this is a question we've responded to in the podcast a few times in the past, but strangely enough, I've still don't feel clear on it. And so Colin's question is essentially, if you boil it down to the basics, it's essentially FICOR versus being a full paid-up SAG-AFTRA member. So the union, Colin says this, says the union talks about FICOR as if it's the worst possible thing in the world, but for him and many people listening, I'm sure, it seems like a really good option given the circumstances. So what are our thoughts? And I kind of asked you, AJ, before we started recording, I was like, what's FICOR again? And you were like, we can ask some people. So it's the kind of thing where it's like, let's clear this up. Let's give a sort of nuggetized definition and point people in the direction of some resources. So I know I think you have them at the ready, AJ. Yeah. I have what I Googled and my sort of basic understanding too. I know like Jen, our production coordinator, is probably listening to this going, let me add him because she's going to know a lot about it. And Ben Whitehair, who's very involved in the union, is going to know a lot about it. My understanding has always been that like it gives you the ability to work as a union member without actually being a full member of the union. So you like pay the dues, but you somehow, there's like this, you're like in limbo where you're somehow able to work. You can work on, I know this for a fact, you can work on non-union projects. You can work on union projects. You can actually gain health and pension benefits if you work enough union jobs, but you're not technically a union member. So you can imagine why someone from SAG-AFTRA would not, or the entire union would not want this. They would not want their members or non-members. They would not want people to be FICOR, essentially. There is actually one of the blogs that I found when I Googled it says that there's a person at every office whose job it is to talk you out of this decision. Yeah. So they take it very, very seriously. Here's a quick list of the rights that you lose when you declare financial core: the right to vote in SAG elections, the right to hold a SAG office, the right to use iActor, the right to represent yourself as SAG on your resume or on the internet. So you cannot actually call yourself a union member if you're a FICOR. You can't have a SAG card. And the right to rejoin SAG without a form. This is really intense. Without a formal hearing and without repaying the initiation fee. Oh, shit.
So it is like, it's a big decision. And there's like, I mean, I don't know what that hearing is like or if it even still happens, but damn, like, that would worry me as an actor who wants to have like a longer term career. Mm-hmm. That being said, coming back to to Colin and his situation, I kind of tend to go with the mindset of doing sort of whatever it takes in one's career to make it work for you. I don't know what it's like to be in a minor market for an extended period of time. I've never done that before. I was in the Bay Area for a little bit. Trev, you were in, the Northeast for a little bit before moving out to Los Angeles. But who knows what it's like in those minor markets now. Maybe it's like, something that like they have to do in order to make stuff work for them. That being said, I don't know what it would actually give you other than to work on both non-union and union projects. I think that's probably the main thrust of the question, or the main issue, the main hang-up is like, I want to be able to work on both non-union and union projects, and this seems like the only way I can actually make that happen.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, like I kind of, it's hard for me to say this as a union member, because I imagine that the party line is that no, you should never be, Phi Corps. But I'm also of the mindset, like, people got to do what they got to do to build a career and make it work and all of that. And I don't know, you've been with the union longer than I have, Trev. So I'm wondering if you have any sort of like factual, like more knowledge-based opinions about Colin's question, or if you have any like emotional response to it as well.
I don't have a ton to offer, but I will say this, that going union, becoming a SAG-AFTRA member, a paying dues member, does denote and communicate to the larger community, casting directors, producers, fellow actors, agents, managers, directors, filmmakers, writers. Going union communicates that you are a professional and that you're taking this seriously and that you're in this for the long haul, that you are a committed business person and artist. Going Phi Corps, I don't think communicates that. I think going Phi Corps is sort of a weird, frowned upon by many, by basically everybody in the union, frowned upon sort of middle step. So I agree that, like, you got to do what you got to do. You got to make it work for yourself. And I think that's an important mindset to have, do whatever it takes. But at the same time, you can turn that around and say, what, I got to do whatever it takes to get into the union, because that is my rightful place as a committed, lifelong, professional actor. I'm looking at the SAG-AFTRA website. I just Googled, what does Phi Corps mean? And I came up with one of these hits, and I'm looking at this page on SAG-AFTRA's website. It says, get the facts about Financial Corps, and it's very anti-Phi Corps. Literally, the headline is, Phi Corps means you are quitting SAG-AFTRA. And one of the bullet points says, Phi Corps people are viewed as scabs or anti-union by SAG members, directors, and writers, most of whom also belong to entertainment unions. And then everything you mentioned as well. And it says, remember, if you're choosing Financial Corps because you were asked to work on a non-union project, you're missing out on an opportunity for the union to organize the project for you and all SAG-AFTRA members. And so the union has so many benefits, and there's a lot of people that fight really, really hard to get you fair treatment, to get you rights, to get you lots of great perks and get you paid as a professional no matter what you do. And I think the faster you can get into the union, assuming that your talent and skill set is up to par, the faster you can get in, the better. You can't lose being a part of the union if you are committed to this for the long haul. So I'm very staunchly in the pro-union column, but that's also coming from a guy who doesn't know a ton about Phi Corps, but I've also just haven't needed to, because I just was like, it was never an option for me. Even though it's an option, it doesn't seem like if you're going to do whatever it takes, why not go all the way?
Yeah. Well, and you also said something about, communicating to the entertainment industry at large that I am I'm taking my career seriously. You can't communicate anything if you're a Phi Corps, because you can't put it out there. You can't call yourself a union member. You can't put it on a resume. You can't put it on the internet. You can't you can't market yourself as a union actor. So it's sort of the opposite, right, of what you were saying. So that's some great points. Thanks for that, Trevor.
Cool. Well, Colin, let us know if that helps, and let us know what you choose. I would really love to hear, like, maybe you know things about going Phi Corps, or your situation is extremely specific and we don't have the full picture, and that Phi Corps actually makes a lot of sense for you and people in your situation. I'd love to hear the other side of this. Obviously, we're biased in favor of being a union member, but I admit I don't have a full understanding of what it means to be Phi Corps. So.
Yeah, we should also point out that Phi Corps is not a SAG-AFTRA specific thing. It actually applies to any union out there. Okay. So anyway, just another little tidbit there.
All right. Well, there it is. Cool. All right. Well, let's jump into this. I'm really excited to hear this interview with Michael Donovan.
Yeah, someone we've obviously wanted to have on the podcast for so long, and I finally got him to put his money where his mouth is and sit down. I give him a hard time about it in the very first part of the interview, so you'll hear that as well. But enjoy this, guys, and we'll catch you on the other side.
guys. So this is AJ, obviously, and I am so excited to be sitting here with someone who we have tried to get on the podcast probably since year one.
Oh, he never invited me, not once.
And here we are 250 some odd episodes later.
Really?
He claims that we never invited him on, which is not true. There's probably even audio evidence of me talking about you on the podcast. Well, I do bring you up, actually, because because we get a lot of questions about, LA theater and stuff like that. So anyway, the irreplaceable Michael Donovan is here with us.
I'm delighted to be here.
But we usually like to start just at the beginning. Like,
Okay.
It's very conversational, but we want to know, what your journey was, and I'm familiar with it because of how we met at UCLA. But how did you get your start in this crazy business called show?
I went to a college in Vermont where I did some acting, and then did a professional job right after that. And then my father said, "Real people don't become actors," and so I took a real job. It sounds so absurd now. I was selling estate planning and corporate pensions and all kinds of stuff like that, and I was good at it because I used my acting chops to be a good salesperson. And then a friend who I'd gone to college with said, "There's this audition, will you go with me?" And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Sure." So on a lark I went with her, and of course I got the job and she didn't.
Oh my God.
I was like, uh-oh. And so I quit my rather lucrative job, much to the shock of my boss at the time. They offered me a ton of money to stay, and I left to do a $125 a week children's theater job, I think is what it was.
Gosh.
And no regrets ever since. No regrets whatsoever. And so that was in New York. And I was an actor in New York for, I guess we were there for several years, and about 3 or 4 years. And then I'd been to LA once before and kind of liked it. And everybody said, "Oh, you're a great film and television type." And I'm like, "Okay, sure." I was booking a fair amount of theater in New York, and then so we came out to LA, and I've done a ton of theater as an actor in LA. And so started doing theater and directing again. I had directed in New York too, and I got involved with West Coast Ensemble. I became president of that theater company. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a very respected and critically acclaimed and all that stuff theater. And I was directing a play, and a casting director came to see it, Beth Holmes. And she came backstage and said, "I love the direction. Would you be interested in directing casting sessions?" And I had no idea what she was talking about. But I'm like, wait, money? I'm an actor. Of course I'm interested. And 2 days later, she hired me. And I'm like, I was totally winging it the first day. And found that I loved it. And it was commercials. And so that started becoming my survival job in between acting gigs. And then Megan Foley, who was Beth Partner's partner at the time, asked me to come on as her assistant, but it was still flexible, so I was still acting. And then I was finding that I was at auditions thinking about what was going on at the casting office. And gradually that became clear to me that that was where my priorities were starting to be. And so then Megan asked me to come on as her associate, and I said yes, and that was kind of where it started. So started in commercials. I've cast about 1,200 commercials now. And then, and then there was that big commercial strike in the late 90s somewhere, and all of a sudden it was like, there aren't so many commercials to cast right now. And by that point, I wasn't working with Megan anymore, and I was out on my own, and then it was somebody asked me to cast a play, and that had never really occurred to me at that point. It was so bizarre, and I was like, okay. And then I always describe it like a locomotive on a fast track coming at me. This career just came at me, and within like a year or two I was casting a ton of theater. And so that's kind of where it's been. But the film and television stuff continued. Let's see where we are. The numbers right now are crazy. They're like it's about 40 or 50 films, and like a dozen series, and I just passed
All at once, or cumulatively over time?
Cumulatively over the years, and I'm at about 550 plays, something crazy like that over the years. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's great. I mean, I still direct when I have time, which isn't very often, but I do, and it's the acting thing. I'm often asked, "Do you miss it?" And it's like, not really. I mean, when I left it behind comfortably. Will I ever do it again? Who the hell knows? Am I allowed to swear? I never.
Oh, yes.
I am. Oh, excellent.
Yeah. Trevor, our co-host, likes to say you can swear and you can make mom jokes if you want.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
So,
we have explicit lyrics on iTunes just in case, if there's any under 18s listening.
Sweet.
Just so you know, there will be swearing.
okay. So anyway, so I don't know, but I love what I do, and it's been really an amazing career that I didn't seek. It sort of found me. So that's why I often say to people, you gotta listen for opportunities, because you don't know what's next.
Yeah.
And when things come up, it's like, pay attention. There's a reason.
Yeah.
They're there. So
Yeah. Awesome. I wonder what maybe you have thought about this and have an answer, or maybe you don't, but you were mentioning the speeding train, the speeding locomotive coming at you.
Yeah.
Do you think that had anything to do with you sort of filling a void, a lack of good theater casting directors in Los Angeles? Because frankly, one of the reasons why your name gets mentioned on the podcast is because if a listener sends in an email or calls in and asks in terms of any question about Los Angeles theater, and it's something about who do I need to meet, what's the landscape like, and I tend to say, look, there's like 4. We talked about this the other night at the Boston Court. There's like
so
4
few.
or 5 main theater casting directors here, and if you have a relationship with them, which I do, I think I have a relationship with all of you. Mm-hmm. You're going to get called in for the stuff that you're working on if you write for something, and it's so interesting to me that it really has become this very small group of people doing most of the theater in Los Angeles. Yep. Was it like that then? Is that why you think it came so fast and furious once you decided to jump into that?
I think it's always been a relatively small group of people that did the theater. For me, it's a bigger question though, because I can remember being on a number of auditions thinking, and this is not specifically theater. This is whatever I was auditioning for as an actor, and not any specific person, but thinking, why are we being treated like shit as actors? What, do you have to treat us like that? I'm very serious. Like, what good does it do to intimidate or harass or whatever you want to call it the actor? I don't see how that helps the actor. I don't see it helps the casting director. It doesn't help the producer. I mean, the whole process, it makes no sense to me. So I remember thinking at some audition, can't somebody do this better? And I don't know if that's where it started. Am I thinking that that's why I wanted to do this, or so I don't think it was to fill a void. Like I thought, I can step in and fill this void. I think that literally the career just came after me.
Yeah, I didn't mean that necessarily you were trying to fill a void. I meant, like, was there a void of good theater casting directors in Los Angeles, and that's where, when someone was like, oh yeah, we need this, and then you took on that job, and then and it sort of just snowballed from that
well,
point.
I do think that there were casting directors for the major theaters. I think that what there wasn't a lot of was necessarily casting directors for the smaller stuff, and that's where I got started, and I continue to do some smaller theaters. I believe in it. So I think that is maybe where there wasn't. I don't know if there was anybody, and maybe that's the hole that I filled in, and I found it very rewarding actually to be able to do that. So no, I don't think that I felt that there wasn't anybody good. There were some really, thinking back, there were some really great people casting around that time. But it was still, even then, it was a very small group.
It's a small group.
It's always
yeah.
been a small
It's always
group.
been a small group.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
I mean, who is it now? We got Phyllis Ring at the Geffen. We got Joanne Deneau at South Coast Rep. You've got me. You've got who am I missing now?
Raoul Staggs. Amy
Lieberman, and
Julia Flores. Yeah, so I've just always been curious about what that's been like, just being a part of such a small.
It's cool, The thing that's frustrating, and you and I've talked about this too, is what I refer to as the genuflection to New York. It's like all the good talent is in New York. That's such bullshit. And the truth is that a lot of the people who are working in the theater, like you, have been on Broadway or been in off-Broadway shows. Have done a lot of theater in New York, and they chose to be here. So why do we assume that only the good talent is in New York? I would agree there's a bigger pool in New York, but there's some really enormously talented people here, and I also think that, and this is maybe off the subject for a moment, but I think the way I got started was because I was coming from the commercial world. I had met all these marvelously talented actors who were doing commercials who weren't doing anything film, television, or theater-wise. And I was like, why? So I'd be bringing people that they'd never met before and going, wow, this guy's amazing. I think, yeah, of course, he's done 27 commercials. You just, for whatever reason, haven't met him. So I think that's kind of what we're experiencing now, is that the days of where you were just a commercial actor, just a film actor, just a theater actor, just a television, that's all blended now. So I think there were a lot of terrific actors with theater experience from New York who've chosen to be here to do more film and television as well. So they're all available to me, or to choose from. So I think this is a terrific market to pull people from. So
yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
As someone who has been cast in your projects.
Of course.
Thanks.
I like AJ. Shall we talk about UCLA? You want to talk about that at all?
I did want to ask you about that, how you came to that. It's funny because, I'm teaching a class there now as well, and
so weird.
I know. And I was curious, how that came about, because I don't think I ever asked you how that came about. But also, you continue to do it. You've been doing it every year since, and just obviously it must be rewarding to meet those the students.
Yeah, it's great.
What sort of is keeping you fueled there and bringing you back every year and all that?
I'm trying to remember how it first started. I think I did some sort of, I think Jeremy Mann asked me to come and do like a one-day thing or something. And then I think that's where it started. And then he asked me to come back. And the idea was to bring in somebody who can bridge the transition from academia to the professional world. And
right.
I mean, so few schools have that, which is just crazy because, they teach you how to act and then kick you out of the nest and you're on your own,
Yeah.
And so the idea was to bring in somebody who's doing it to kind of say, here's what to expect as you go through the next, next few months when you get out of here.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we do now is this 10-week class, 3 hours a week that I started with just the musical theater actors when I was teaching you, and then I think a couple of years later they asked me to come in and do the regular actors. What do we call those people? I never know what to call it.
So you're doing both tracks.
I'm doing
you're
both
doing the
tracks
musical
now.
theater track and the acting track.
And the acting track.
Okay.
Yeah. And the last time Jeremy and I sat down to figure this out, I think the number then was, and this is about 5 years ago, that my office had given something like 170 jobs to the students, to Bruins.
Yeah.
Which
Wow.
is nuts. Yeah. And now it's way over that.
Yeah.
Way over that.
Yeah, it was 5 years later. Yeah.
So I'm meeting these, I'm meeting the next wave. I'm meeting these incredibly talented people. UCLA has a great program, and then I now direct the senior showcase, and I bring in agents and managers. A lot of the kids get agents, and so it's a really helpful transition for them to.
So I knew that the undergrads had started doing their own showcase like the grad students, and you're directing that now?
Yeah.
Wow.
I directed it for the last, 4 years, 5
That's
years.
so
something.
cool.
Yeah, it is. It's fun.
So I love that you're still directing. I don't know that I knew that. I didn't know that I knew that you were still directing when you had time. That's really cool.
I love it. I direct actors all day long, so that it actually satisfies both sides because I read with actors, as you know.
Yeah.
So I get to still act,
Mm-hmm.
and I also it's a shorthand way of my finding out: are you listening? Are you gonna hang on to what you're doing and not adjust and all those things? So I find a lot of information quickly by reading with an actor. But it's also fun for me, and then I get to redirect, so I get to act and direct.
Yeah.
Which is great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. It reminds me of actually a question I wanted to ask you, because there are a lot of casting directors that are, I don't know what the word is, former actors.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot of casting directors. And then there are some that aren't, but are still fantastic, and they do a really great job of being able to read what the actor is trying to do, being able to redirect them. And it is sort of this interesting intersection of directing, acting, and you're running your own business obviously too. Right. So there's all this interesting skill sets that you have to have in order to be a successful casting director. You may not be able to answer this question because it's not you, but I was wondering if you might be able to speak about what makes a casting director who wasn't a former actor so good at it, the good ones. Because I've been in the room. I've been in the room with, I've done like workshops or whatever where the casting director actually does, something like it is in fact an educational experience, not a paid audition. And they're giving redirection and it's really insightful. Right. and whatever, and in between every scene she would turn around to the rest of the class and be like, I'm not an actor. I was never an actor. I sometimes I don't necessarily speak the actorese, but I it's just like what I see, and almost like she was going off of intuition. Yeah. And I've seen other casting directors who weren't former actors being able to do this, and I'm wondering if you have any insight into where that instinct might be coming from.
I think you just said it. Intuition, I think, is the word, because I think that what we do as a casting director is all about intuition. It's about intuition, and it's about taste, and it's something that I don't know that can be taught. I think that you can teach how to find out who's the hottest person around, who's the biggest name in the business right now, who's pulling numbers on social media, all those things. Yes, you can be taught all that stuff, but can you be taught to recognize talent? I don't know. I think it's something that I feel very blessed that is something that is intuitive with me, and I'll get back to this. Let me just kind of, while I'm thinking of this, it's like there are so many times over my career that I've read a script and thought of who it should be, and the likelihood of that happening means that person has to, okay, first of all, like it, be available, be interested in whatever the money is, the agent has to approve it, the manager, down the list. And I cannot tell you how many times that person has ended up in the role.
Oh, man.
And that means the director approved, the producer. The steps that it has to go through for that to happen make it almost impossible for that to happen. And it's happened many times. So that's something that I don't think can be taught. And I think that somebody who hasn't been an actor can still have that sort of zero in on what this person, their intuition is telling them this is what is right for this actor, for this role.
Yeah. And
I think that sometimes that objectivity almost works better for them because they're not invested as somebody who thinks back to, I could read this role better. I think that's one of the problems I think with some casting directors who are former actors. I think there is, they have a little bit of the
ego chip on their shoulder.
Yes, exactly. Like, I could have done this role better. There was one casting director who cast himself a few things. I'm like, I really shouldn't be doing that. But okay. So I think it's something that is it's a gift, and I'm grateful for it, and it's hard to explain it to people.
Yeah. Well, I can. It's funny because ironically, I can almost corroborate that it is a gift because I don't have it. I don't think that sometimes I hear people talk about type, for instance, and they're like, oh, this person can play that, and this person can play that, and oh, they're coming across as like having this kind of energy, and I'm like, oh, really? I didn't
feel it.
I didn't see that. I didn't, and I'm always fascinated by that ability, that skill set, and so yeah, I would absolutely call it a gift or a very particular skill set or intuition.
It's also it's a little bit about manipulation too, because sometimes your client doesn't see it, and you have to be very careful. If you and those of us who are in casting, who are passionate about our careers, there are times when you're like, no, you have to understand that this is the right person for this role, and so now we have to figure out how we're going to convince the director and producer of that But the manipulation has to be that you have to make them believe that it was their decision. So it's like, because I learned that lesson
it's
really.
Like Inception.
Oh man! Early on, there was one person who this woman is super talented, amazing, and I knew she was the right person for the role. I knew it, and I oversold her. I basically, raved too much. And, of course, she could never match what I had said about her. And so it was like, oh, okay, I really screwed up. So I think I lost the role for her. I should have just shut up and let her just demonstrate just how talented she was. Wow. So now what I do is, it depends on if I have an ongoing relationship with the director and we have a very close relationship. That's a whole different story. But in somebody who's kind of newish or we're getting to know each other, I don't say a whole lot. When somebody comes in, I'll maybe a little bit, like, I cast this person and so, or you may know this person from such and such, that kind of thing, and maybe I'll point out a credit or two on their resume, but it's like, it's going to happen in the room or it's not going to happen in the room. If it's something after the actor leaves where they're on the fence, then it's up to me to say, okay, I didn't feel they had a particularly great audition, or you may want to look at this, this part of their reel, or I would consider bringing them back and we'll give them an adjustment, all those things. So, and I think that's something that a casting director who wasn't an actor can do as well. Kind of knows how to handle the room and the clients and that kind of thing. So.
This is, oh man, so many questions now are like
of course
filling up my head because now we're talking about the audition process and we're talking about your relationship, basically political relationship with these people and like how in terms of the politics of that, it's like, oh, how much do I push, how much do I not, and the lessons you've learned over time with that. So I want to bring it back on the stuff that we can bring it back to the stuff that we as actors can control by asking. It seems like you will either go to the mat for somebody who you feel like is right for the part.
Yep.
Bring people in and advocate for them either before, during, or after the audition, and like who is talented and who can handle certain parts. What have those people done to earn that from you? Because obviously we can't control what you say to the producers and to the directors, but what we can control is our performance. Work ethic, maybe how we show up, what we do in the room, whatever it is. How have those people like earned that from you based on their work in the room or something you've cast them in or what have you?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I want to know that I can trust you, trust that you will deliver, obviously, in a situation that I'm recommending you for. So that comes from you have exhibited, extremely professional behavior. You have, in the past, all the things that we want, shown the ability to follow direction, to make specific choices. That is what it's all about. Everybody make specific choices. I sit through so much general. I don't sit through a lot of crap. We've talked about this. It's absolutely a myth that we sit through a lot of terrible auditions. That doesn't happen. Maybe through some open calls, perhaps, But mostly what I sit through is sort of, that was perfectly pleasant, and I don't care. You know what I mean? It's like, and every time I say this, people think that I mean make an outrageous choice. That's not what I mean at all. A specific choice is one that is committed, organic, and appropriate for you. I don't give a shit what anybody else is doing. I want to know what you think it should be. So people that are willing to do that, that are willing to commit to their choices, and also then be just as willing to be redirected and let it go, are people that have proven themselves to me, and I want to bring them in over and over again. So I don't really keep track of how much you've booked. That's the thing that's interesting for me. I could maybe disagree with who they booked.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to bring in the person who I liked.
Yeah.
And I'll do that over and over again. And boy, you get on my good side, I'm going to stay with you because I believe in you. I think there's something that, you know, there's something about you that I find exciting, and we just have to find the right, you know, that right jigsaw puzzle where you're the right size piece to fit in. And I think that's one of the mistakes I made as an actor, and I think a lot of people make as an actor. We focus on the audition. It's not the audition, it's the career. Okay? Yeah. So when you come into audition for me, I'm not just thinking about you for this role. I'm deciding, do I like you as an actor, period. You know, and then that's going to bear tremendous fruit, not just whether you got this part or not. Sure, it'd be great if you got this part because it makes my life easier. But if you don't, I think, you know, where am I going to put this guy at some point? Where am I going to find something because I love this actor?
Yeah.
And so it's a combination of a lot of things. How you are in the room, you know, when it's not just me too, is very telling. You know, how do you handle pressure? How do you handle when something goes wrong? How do you conduct yourself, like in a musical audition? How do you conduct yourself at the piano? I mean, all those things. It's a combination of so many things. It's not such a simple answer.
Do you get, on that note, do you get sort of reports from your assistants and stuff who are outside of the room?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, to tell you right now,
this person,
you were rude to my assistant, you're done.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. Because I was that guy. I was the assistant in the lobby. So it's like, you know, it's like, you're done. And my interns and my assistants and associates and everything are instructed that if there's any issue, I need to know about it. Okay? Yeah. And I will absolutely reveal that to the team. Absolutely. Yeah. It's absolutely unforgivable.
Yeah.
You have no right to be rude to anybody in your life, number one, but in a professional situation where you're coming, your audition starts the moment you walk in that building. Mm-hmm. You know, actually your audition should be well before that, but you know what I mean? So you're being certainly judged by as you walk in. And you don't know who that person is, that you think it's okay to sort of be dismissive. I mean...
Yeah.
Can I tell a story?
Please.
Yeah. So years ago, I'm doing this. It was a movie, and I happened to walk through my lobby. This is many years ago. I looked pretty young at that point, and in walks an actor. Like, this is maybe 5 minutes before his audition time, who is there for a really meaty supporting role, like a second lead in this movie. Okay, and kind of like. Clearly looks at me like I'm some peon, and he goes, are there sides? I'm like, are there sides? And you're reading for a second lead in the movie in 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, so 5 minutes later, I brought him in. Yeah. And you watch the color just drain out of this guy's face as you realize, oh, I'm the casting director. You know, and it's like, first of all, you struck out on so many levels there. You know what I mean? You were rude to me in the lobby. You were dismissive, at least. You told me you weren't prepared whatsoever, okay? And then, I mean, how can you possibly expect to get there? What are you doing? Why are you here?
Yeah.
You should have rescheduled, is what you should have done. You should have just called your agent and lied, said you were sick or whatever, and see if you can get a different appointment. And otherwise, you have no right to be there. You've wasted not only my time, you've wasted your time. There was not a chance this is going to happen. I mean, it's different if I get a call from a manager and says, you know, he got off the set at 4:00 in the morning, he's going to get there, but he's exhausted. I mean, okay, fine, then I'll cut you some slack.
Yeah.
You know, that shit happens.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you know.
You were one of the first, I think you were one of the first people ever told me, this was at UCLA, I think we talked about, you asked the class, you're like, should you tell the casting director if you're sick?
Yeah.
You know, and everybody in the room was like, no, why would you do that? And you're like, absolutely, tell them.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily remember that for the idea of, you know, walking in sick and letting them know. I remember it because it's about like a relationship and a communication and being authentic.
Right.
You know, it's like, look, I got these last night, if it's the sides, or I'm a little under the weather, I'm going to try and sing over it, but just so you know, or whatever. It's about just, you know, being in communication, because...
And it's not apologizing.
And not apologizing.
Right.
Just letting you know.
Right.
I'm just letting you
That's
know.
it. Yeah.
We sometimes refer to auditions now on the podcast as meetings, because it's an artistic meeting. It's like, I've made my specific choices, to use your... you know, I'm bringing them into the room here, and I want to see if they jive with what you were thinking. And if you know, have some ideas, you're going to give those to me, and I'm going to, you know, and so there's a conversation there. So it becomes much less of a dog and pony show. Like, let me like do a little song and dance for you. Yeah. And the other thing that we say that when you said you're not booking the job, you're booking the career. We call it booking the office.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, book
That's
the
great.
office.
Yeah, because then that's what you asked me before. Like, well, why do I bring people in again? Because you're sort of in, if you will, with me. You're like, okay, I love you as a performer. So let's just, you know. And then their actors will say to me, you know, is everything okay? I'm like, what? And they'll go, well, you haven't had me in like in 6 months. And I'll go, really? Because I don't even realize I haven't had you in 6 months, because you were somebody, you know, in my weird list in my head that I like, you know. But it just means it wasn't anything you were right for.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, you can't even worry about that. But that's a great way. Booking the office, I kind of like that. I like that.
Steal away.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that within that office, you know, you have people who are somebody's assistant. Well, they're not going to be somebody's assistant forever. So you are leaving an impression not just with the casting director, but with the other people in that office too. So I think it's a good way to think about it.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed part one of AJ's chat with prolific theater casting director, LA theater casting director Michael Donovan. As of this recording, I have not had the opportunity to listen to it yet, or I should take responsibility. I have not made the time to listen to it in advance, but I'm really excited to tune in because, like you said, AJ, we've been trying for a long time to get him on, and it's a real gift, I think, to the community to have someone of his expertise and wisdom, because he's been at this for a long time, sharing his knowledge with the community.
Yeah, and he's also, you know, we talk about it in the interview, but he's in a sort of a teaching mode, because that's where we first met. He teaches a class every year at UCLA that's sort of similar to what Ben and I were doing with like the digital actor workshop stuff. It's like plugging the holes where they don't necessarily get the business side of the business, you know? Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, there's always a need for that, man. Oh, something about the entertainment industry. There's always a need for somebody to explain like the myriad ways to sort of like make it work for yourself. Cool, man. So picks of the week, we both chose films that were nominated for SAG-AFTRA Best Picture Awards. So let's go through these real fast. I haven't seen La La Land yet, but you have.
Yes.
Tell us why it's the pick of the week.
Oh my God, it is such a love letter to artists. It is so beautiful and so like inspirational and heartbreaking and really well done, and a sort of a classic musical feel in a contemporary context. So it feels at once like it's a story happening right now, today, 2016, 2017, you know, could have happened, you know, this past year. And at the same time, people are breaking out into song. You know, I can't even begin to explain like how, and for somebody who does musical theater too, on top of it, like to have it work like that. The only thing I didn't like about it was I wanted there to be more songs. You know, they did such a great job of only using the music when it was, you know, necessary, when like putting a big like production number here or a moment like a solo here or something like that. It was used sort of sparsely in that way. And as somebody who's like a fan of big book musicals. I wanted more, but even if there was no music in it, even if it wasn't a musical, the sentiments in it, the love letter to artists, to dreamers is if you haven't seen it yet and you're listening to this, just stop listening to this. Or listen to Trevor's pick as well, and then go watch the movie.
It's one of the digital screeners I got. There's another thing for the union. You get these screeners. That's my favorite part. It's one of the screeners I got, but it's a digital one, so I have to download it online or go view it via a protected website. But I'm excited to see it. I've heard only great things.
It's so good.
It's always a good thing when you hear that something is so good, but there's not enough of something in it. It's like that's always a good critique. It's great. I just wish it were longer or there was more of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see it again because it was such a beautiful way. Like I saw it on New Year's Eve, and then New Year's Day we started the Artist's Way in the membership, and it was like this perfect, beautiful 1-2 punch. I don't know. I'm feeling very inspired as an artist right now.
Oh, I love that. Awesome, man. Very, very cool.
Yeah. So, and your pick of the week is another SAG screener.
Yeah. This is one of the DVDs that I got. It's called Manchester by the Sea. It's Casey Affleck and Michelle Williams. Thank you.
Yeah.
And there's a few other people in it. Matthew Broderick's in it for a second. It's written and directed by Kenneth Lonergan, prolific playwright. He wrote In Our Youth, which is something I've done a few scenes from a few times. It's just a wonderful, intimate relationship film. Casey Affleck definitely better be in the running for an Oscar for Best Actor for that, because he was so... It's a rare movie these days. I was actually talking about this on the plane on my way back from Philly. I was sitting next to this guy and I was watching some movies I had on my laptop, and I watched Room, which was in contention for Oscar stuff last year, and what's her face, Brie Larson won Best Actress for it. And I was watching it, and the dude next to me was like, "Oh, you how was that movie?" And I was like, "You know what? It's a rare movie these days that I can watch without sort of picking it apart. I get so tuned into the process, and I'm looking at the lighting, and I'm watching the acting, and I'm listening to the writing, and I'm watching the directing, and how they cut the movie, and where the soundtrack comes in. And that's just the way I watch movie these days, and it's kind of a problem because I find I have a hard time enjoying films." And because that's what I see. I have a hard time like getting swept up in the story. It rarely happens for me anymore. And so often watching films these days becomes a sort of intellectual exercise and something that's more of a task than anything else. But this film, Manchester by the Sea, was something where I wasn't watching actors. I was watching people. I wasn't watching a storyline unfold according to the beats of a script. I was watching somebody's life. I was watching flashbacks. I was really getting a feel for this town and this situation, and it was just beautifully done. And it's been sitting with me for the past few days since I watched it. So highly recommend it. See it in the theater if you are not a union member and did not get the screener. And if you are, good for you. Check it out. It should be in the mail shortly. So that is 2 movies for our listeners to watch this week, La La Land and Manchester by the Sea. Watch them, love them, be inspired. That is all the time we have for episode 262. Anything to add before we get out of here?
Nah, man.
All right.
Let's roll. Today's episode of Inside Acting was produced and co-hosted by me, AJ Meyer, and of course, Trevor Algatt. Jen Levin is our production coordinator. Vidali Gubrick is our marketing web director. Deborah Smith is our community manager. And Fern Lim designed our logo.
You can sign up for our weekly email dispatch and listen to all of our episodes over at our website, InsideActing.net. Also find us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, and if you do nothing else, a nice review on iTunes would be a lovely thing you could do for us and for the community. It's a lot like giving us a tip, and it helps other people find the show and trust that it's worth their ear time as well. So go ahead and hop over to iTunes and give us a nice review if you enjoy what we're doing.
Ear time is important. Ear time is important. Special thanks to our sponsors, Rehearsal Pro and VO2GoGo.com, the award-winning voiceover training system and winner of Backstage's Reader's Choice Award for Best VO Training 4 years in a row. You can visit VO2GoGo.com/start for a free Getting Started in Voiceover online class that will help you add voiceover to your acting portfolio, and who doesn't want to do that? Make money in your pajamas. That's VO2GoGo.com/start. And of course, thanks to you, our listeners for sticking it out another year, another season. 2017, here we come. You can support the show in a myriad ways with a financial contribution, a favorable review on iTunes, as we just talked about, retweets, and kind public words. Word of mouth is huge. That's how our podcast has grown to where it is today. And of course, by subscribing to our newsletter, which is going to take another. Is it an evolution? If we've already done it before, it's gonna be growing. We're going back to something we used to do with the newsletter. So get subscribed there and visit InsideActing.net to get started in all those different ways. A big, huge thank you to all of you who have supported the show thus far, and a big, huge thank you to those of you who are considering doing so. You can also make a one-time, no-strings-attached, tax-deductible contribution to support the podcast via PayPal, Square, or Venmo. Just visit InsideActing.net/contribute. Or you can sign up as a member for just $7 a month. Get access to our private member message board, invites to exclusive events, fun freebies, special bonus content, and much, much more. That's all at InsideActing.net. Click on the membership tab to learn more.
And that does it for episode 262 of Inside Acting, first episode of 2017. What? Season 14. Thank you guys for listening. Really excited to be going into this year with you and all of the possibilities that lay ahead for all of us. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, mood follows action.